Welcome to the Maria Liberati Show, where food meets art, travel, and life. What does food mean to you? Tell me in a recorded soundbite of 60 seconds or less, or a post of 50 words or less. Post on social media, hashtag it the Maria Liberati Show. If your soundbite or post are selected to be part of an upcoming segment, I'll send an autographed copy of my book, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, to you as special thanks. I love having my listeners be part of the show, so please join in. What does food mean to you? Well, all this month we're paying homage to the month of October as being Italian Heritage Month, and today just happens to be National Dessert Day. What is it about cookies, or biscotti in Italian, that have even the harshest food critics saying, whether these sinfully sweet desserts are prepared warm and gooey or tastily crunchy? I've never met a cookie that I didn't like. Derived from the Dutch word koekie, meaning little cake. In most countries, cookies are referred to as biscuits. In Italian, they're referred to as biscotti. Where is this leading to? Anginetti cookies, of course, the Italian comfort food, something that really cheers me up when I've had an unusually stressful day. They are light little angel puffs. Baking up a small batch of these brings the sunshine back into a dreary day. And oh yes, eating them are just as much fun, and they put that lightness back into your spirit. Hope you get to see a rainbow today and have an Anginetti cookie. And join me for my hashtag Friday favorites on Facebook Live at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this coming Friday, October 16th. That's hashtag Friday favorites on Facebook Live. But here's my recipe for Anginetti bite-sized cookies. 1 teaspoon of real vanilla, 1 teaspoon of fresh lemon zest, 6 tablespoons of butter, a half a cup of skim milk, half a cup of sugar or organic sugar or sugar substitute, 3 whole eggs or 3/4 cup of egg beaters, 3.5 cups of unbleached all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, half a teaspoon of baking soda. For the icing, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 1 tablespoon of freshly squeezed lemon juice, 1 cup of confectioner's sugar, and 1 tablespoon of water. However, instead of the 1 cup of confectioner's sugar, in order to make this recipe healthier, you can take 1 cup of coconut sugar or 1 cup of date sugar with a tablespoon of tapioca flour and put that in a high-speed, high-powered blender and pulse it until the sugar becomes powdered like confectioner's sugar. And you're going to substitute that for the confectioner's sugar here. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees while lining a large cookie sheet with parchment paper. In a large mixing bowl, you're going to beat the vanilla, the fresh lemon zest, the butter, the milk, and the sugar with an electric mixer on medium setting until it's well blended. You're going to add the eggs in one at a time, beating for about a minute after you've added each egg in. Once all of the eggs are blended in, you're going to put the mixer on low, and you're going to sift the flour and baking soda into the dough about 1 cup at a time until the consistency becomes a firm and sticky dough. If it becomes too firm, you can stop the blender and have a wooden spoon available to continue the mixing. Dust your hands lightly with some flour, and you're going to roll the dough into bite-sized balls. Place approximately 20 onto a prepared cookie sheet, spacing them about 2 inches apart. You're going to bake these for 10 to 12 minutes or until light golden brown. While the first batch is baking, you're going to prepare the icing, and that was the vanilla, lemon juice, confectioner sugar, or the confectioner sugar substitute, and water. You're going to place all that in a small mixing bowl, whisk the ingredients together until everything is well blended. Now, when you remove your first batch of cookies from the oven, place a sheet of wax or parchment paper beneath a wire rack. While the cookies are still warm, you're going to ice them. So what you're going to do is get a small pastry brush, frost the top of each cookie with icing. If you want, you can sprinkle with some additional confectioner sugar. You're going to transfer the cookies to a rack for cooling, to that wire rack for cooling, and then begin the second batch. And let the cookies cool, and as they cool, the icing will harden. For the month of October, it's Italian Heritage Month, and we have a special guest. It's Melissa Muldoon, who is an author, blogger, Italophile, and her blog is Studentessa Mata, and she's a language enthusiast and Italian enthusiast. So she's so interesting, has so many interesting projects. So we're welcoming Melissa Muldoon here today. Welcome, Melissa. Thanks so much for being a part of the podcast today.
Buongiorno. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Buongiorno. You know what? The first thing we wanted to ask you, so you say you fell in love with Italy as a student in Florence. What brought you to Florence in the first place? Tell us all about that.
Well, in college, I was fortunate to select Italy as my destination to spend a year abroad, and I was going there to study art history and painting. I had no intention of learning the language, but Italy has an interesting thing it does to you. When I came home, I threw away my Italian dictionary, never thinking I had a talent for languages because I'd studied German for 5 years. But I started my career and had kids and was going along happily. And then I read a book that had a lot of Italian phrases mixed in, and I really regretted not learning the language very well. So at that point, I decided to start self-teaching myself the language. But the experience of living in Florence, just the sounds, the smells, it just changes your life when you have a foreign abroad study program. So highly recommended to any young person who is thinking about going abroad.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yes, definitely. And it opens your mind up, doesn't it? When you go and you live in another country, it just really opens you up to new worlds, I think, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And I lived with an Italian family, and we had dinner every night, and they didn't speak English. So I got by with my smattering of, I was taking an Italian class at the time. I was in Florence. And so I had just enough to get by. And when I came home, just the sights and sounds, the sounds of the trains, the clanging of the bells, and it just things like that stayed with me. And it just really changed me, and the only way I could make a connection with Italy after returning home was to learn the language. That way I could fare un legame, make a connection with the people I had left there and my friends, and keep that connection alive.
I had told you I had studied to be a linguist, and one of my fortes is communication. So people don't realize what a communication builder, well, we communicate with language, but language is so important. So if you go to another country, even if you can't learn the language fully, I always feel that it's so important to just learn even some key phrases, because people don't realize that everything that we say is not translatable exactly, because every language has their own idioms and connotations and things like that.
When I was there, after I got the courage, I started returning to Italy after I had studied for the language for a while, amazing things happened. As soon as I opened my mouth, the Italians are so open and welcoming and warm. I had this amazing experience in Gubbio. I didn't want to leave a restaurant before I had opened my mouth and spoken, because I was so terrified to say anything. But I met a gentleman, my husband was with me. He invited us back to his shop. This was in Gubbio, and it was midnight, and he's like, "Where are we going?" But the gentleman, we had just struck up this conversation, even though I was probably massacring, my grammar tenses at the time. And he was a truffle hunter, and he unlocked his shop and poured us wine and let us taste his things that so this is my experience reoccurring on over and over again. As soon as I try to communicate with any of my Italian friends, they become dear friends, or we become friends, and it just creates such a rich fabric. And I was addicted at that point. I just thought, if I can continue making these people connections, that's what I was doing with the language. So we'll get into it later, but I take people to Italy to learn the language, small group immersion programs. I believe to learn a language, you have to know the culture, and to know the culture, you have to know the language. So these things go hand in hand. And that's what I want to give the people who travel with me on my trips, the opportunity to have these back-scene experiences. Like when we go to Arezzo, we go to the joust, and we are partying with the neighborhoods and with the jousters sitting up in front of us and dancing in the streets with all the people in the quartiere. It's just so much fun.
That's great. Yes, people to speak. And I would take it further too. Like I know with food, which is why when I put my books together, I always wanted to include more than just recipes in my books, because I always felt that language and culture had so much to do with food as well. So you had to kind of put it all together. And you're absolutely right that in order to know the culture, you really have to know, a little bit about the language. But that experience sounds really interesting. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your novels, because they sound like really beautiful novels. And I know we have one that's Waking Isabella. And what is the other one?
I started with Dreaming Sophia, and then that is set in Florence. And it really is fictionalized. It tells my story, how I fell in love with Italy to some point. It's about an artist from Sonoma, California, and how she makes her way to Italy and her life experiences. And through her daydreams, she has suffered a tragedy. She's able to speak to all the big important characters of Italian culture, like Dante and Garibaldi and Sophia Loren. And they each give her a little piece of advice and help her walk the line between fantasy and reality. And it was amazing, because after I wrote this, I was able to actually meet Sophia Loren. And I have framed on my wall, my prized possession. She wrote me a letter after I sent her my book. But so I started with that. And basically the first book evolved out of my blog, Studentessa Matta, that I write in English and Italian. And I write a lot of nonfiction. Obviously, I'm putting together stories, legends. I talk about Giovanotti one day. I could be talking about a politician the next. So that's why I'm called Studentessa Matta, the crazy student. And it's a potpourri. But I wanted to find a vehicle, try my hand. I had met along the way, my journey of writing my blog, many women authors, and I thought I would like to try my hand. So that's when I first decided to create my first fiction novel. And the second, then I learned so much. We had talked, I started my own printing press, and I just the product design on my covers. I'm a graphic designer by profession. I had so much knowledge. I thought I have to write a second book. I can't put this away. So that's when I came up with the idea of Waking Isabella, which is the story of Isabella da Medici and how she died. And so it weaves together stories of three women, and there's stories of it also jumps into the 1940s during World War II, and a painting of Isabella that goes missing. At that time, a lot of paintings were being snatched by, to create the great Fur Museum.
Yes.
So they were hiding art all over Italy. If you've heard the Monument Men trying to recover a lot of art that was hidden. Yes. And it takes place in my favorite town, Arezzo, and we talk about the joust and all the little stories of the folk culture of Arezzo.
Yes.
And my third novel is called Eternally Artemisia, and tells the story of Artemisia Gentileschi. So I weave together culture, art, language, as well as art history into my novels. And Artemisia was one of the first 17th century Baroque artists, a female who was championed by Galileo and Cosimo II in Florence. And she suffered a great tragedy in her life, and then how she rose above that. And so I weave together a story, these three novels, I weave together contemporary stories with stories from the past. I just want to bring to light some of these women that are incredible, the accomplishments that they were able to achieve in a time that was a very male-dominated society, and yet they overcame a lot of difficulties.
So we have Waking Isabella, Dreaming Sophia, and Eternally Artemisia.
It weaves together also. It's a little bit of a time travel novel in that I explore the idea of loves that keep returning and repeating over and over through life. And it can be between men and women, or there is a couple, but also Artemisia and her relationship with the art therapist who does these art retreats in Tuscany, and how she is able to retell her story through my contemporary protagonist's eyes.
Yeah, so they're all based on fact. In other words, fact, and which is really, really interesting. So it's a great way for people to learn a little bit about history, but I think in an entertaining way. I always like things that are like that. It's an entertaining,
of course,
and it's a beautiful way.
They're embellished a little bit, it's fiction. The idea is to entertain as well as to inform. So they're told in a fun way. And and I'm right now ready to publish in December my fourth book, which is called The Secret Life of Sophonisba Anguissola. The most famous woman. You've never heard of Sophonisba Anguissola?
No, actually I haven't. So tell us about her.
She was actually predated Artemisia in the 1500s, and she was a pupil or student of Michelangelo. And not many people know that this woman was selected by Michelangelo, and he sung her praises to Vasari, who was the first art historian, and she is included in the book he wrote of the most famous lives of the artists of the time. So she had a fascinating life. So I've taken her story, embellished it a little bit, but so that's coming out soon.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, because way back then, people didn't even acknowledge, the females that were artists or writers, or, a lot of them even changed their names to put a masculine name so people wouldn't realize that it was a female doing whatever. So
exactly.
That's really, really interesting. Well, wow, that's and people can find your books on Amazon, or?
Yes, all my books are on Amazon in print and EPUB, and also the 3 books I mentioned first that are already out in publication are now on audiobook on Audible, and also audio on Amazon. And I worked with this fabulous actress, and she read the books. And so the intent of my first book really was as what had happened to me when I read this book way back when, after I'd come back from my travels in English. It's written in English, but it had a lot of Italian expressions, and that's what made me want to learn the language. So the intent with my first book was to include lots of Italian expressions and to introduce people to the culture of coffee and going to the bar and the sounds you hear in the cafes. And so I wanted a lot of sensory, everything. It was my way of seeing Italy I wanted to present in my first book. So
yes.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice it's currently Italian Heritage Month, and I think from what I've heard and know from travel agents and all, I don't think we're really technically allowed to travel to Italy yet. I'm pretty sure. So if you're an American and say you still want to get this experience, it sounds like you started doing your blog before you could travel there yourself. Is that correct?
I started learning the language, and then the blog I opened up, studentessamata.com, was a means for me to work on my language skills. And that was the idea at the very initial. It was to invite the world to correct me. I was going to write only in Italian, and it was going to be like a daily journal, or I'd write about things. And then it turned into, I realized at that point, I decided to make it a dual language blog because I realized a lot of principianti, very beginning Italian students were following the blog, and it helped them to have both the English and the Italian translation next to each other. Yeah. And then a funny thing happened that I started networking, and a lot of people, it became a popular blog, and schools in Italy started reaching out to me asking to partner with them because they had the same kind of philosophy, learning language and culture and language. And so I started putting together small group language immersion programs up to 10 people. And I've been doing that for like the last 6 years, going twice a year, spending The programs are up to 10 people, last about a week, sometimes 10 days, sometimes 2 weeks.
Right.
And we study in the morning, and then I put together programs in the afternoon, cooking classes, wine tasting, where we can continue using our language in a very comfortable, anxiety-free zone so that people can get as much language as they can. But I started this blog because of that.
Right. So can you actually take people to Italy? Like, say right now, I don't think you can. I think that's
No,
on
but
hold.
this year I had to cancel. I had a program in Arezzo in June and also in Lucca in September, and I unfortunately had to cancel.
Yes.
So yeah, this year was.
You can't. So what I was going to ask, do you have any advice for people that, they want to experience the culture, the language, Italy, it's Italian Heritage Month. Unfortunately, we can't go there. Any advice? Any ideas?
Come visit me on my blog, and you can learn all kinds of Italian recipes. You can visit places virtually. I have lots of learning tips on the blog page, so you can take a virtual. Also, read my books. You can take a virtual armchair trip to Italy. Yes. I do offer too. It's starting to open up, so I have all the people who signed up with me this year were They just said, we're going to postpone it. We'll go with you next year. So I'm very confident that next year things will hopefully start opening up. Yes. So again, in June and September. But yeah, I also offer through my blog homestay opportunities. And those, I've been very encouraged because people are starting to book more homestays, which is an opportunity to go to Italy on your own, stay in the home of an Italian language teacher. And she has the same kind of one-on-one that I offer through my small group immersion programs. But I've seen bookings for that starting to increase.
Oh, okay.
Also, people in Europe book through my site too. So I've seen more movement, people wanting to go to Italy, the desire. And
yes. I know of a lot. I mean, I myself had to cancel a lot of things there, but I know many people that I've talked to that they had to cancel and they've rescheduled already, and they're, very hopeful. We're all very hopeful that, I'm sure it will be soon. And I know there's people doing a lot of virtual things, and I've actually kept in all my contacts and all through virtual, and it's, it's really easy to do that. So at least you can do that now. So do you have a favorite Italian dish you can tell us about?
Carbonara. I love.
Carbonara. Yes, and I was going to say, and it's fitting because World Pasta Day is October 17th, I think. There's World Pasta Day and National Pasta Day. So they're all in October, so that is very fitting, the pasta carbonara. Yeah. And I'm sorry, what was that?
No, it's so good. It's so good, but I love pasta, and I've been known to make pasta myself.
Oh, that's great. Yes, that's definitely a fun.
That's a good way to put on some good Italian music. I've got a great Spotify Italian playlist, and I like to listen to that when I go walking. So I find a way, and I guess even before pandemic, all this, I'm always an advocate of creating an Italian language experience or immersion experience at home. People sometimes say, I can't learn the language unless I'm living in Italy, but I offer so many, and then I'm the biggest cheerleader. That's for Italian language and culture. So I just believe it is possible to immerse yourself. I watch Italian TV. I go to RAI. I'm constantly texting my friends in Italian. So it definitely is possible.
Yes, it definitely is. It definitely is. So, yes, there are so many ways out there now, especially with this, there's a lot of, museums and all kinds of places in Italy that you can do tours virtually. So, you can tour so many things.
I just posted that, just this weekend. The Uffizi, for example, has La Mia Sala, which is the curator of one of the many rooms, like the Michelangelo room, or what the Eleonora de Toledo Bronzino painting. She will, one of the curators comes and gives you in Italian a full description, and it's like a one-on-one art history lesson. Wow. And there are about 30 of those, and you can immerse it. Go to the Uffizi over the weekend if you like.
Yes, exactly.
Online,
you can tour there. That's definitely a great immersion experience. Melissa, I always ask all my guests at the end, their last question is,
Mhm.
what does food mean to you? Because everybody has a special something that usually food is related to. So what does food mean to you?
Well, I think I love going to Italy and working with my Italian chefs, the nonna, the nonne, and making food and talking and chatting in Italian. And it's a warm, nurturing environment. I love the creative process of creating the pasta from scratch.
Mhm.
It's like, for me, I don't really like cooking, but when I do, it's like making a painting. I like to spend the afternoon and really get my hands involved and create something really beautiful. And I think there's Italian cooking is so savory, and there are just so many variations on the type of pastas that I think it's just entertainment. It's fun.
Well, thank you for that. That is perfect. Yes, that's a great answer. So, much success to you for your next books coming out. And I know we can find you at Student Tessamata.
Mm-hmm.
And we can also look for your books. And if anybody wants to get involved in any of those immersion programs, they can go to Student Tessamata.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It's just been a delight to talk with you.
Yes, thank you, Melissa. It was great talking to you. Very interesting. Thank you. And hopefully we'll be asking you to come back maybe to talk about one of your upcoming books. Thanks, Melissa. Thanks for joining us and listening to the Maria Liberati Show. If you have any recipes that were inspired by my Anginetti cookies, or if you make the Anginetti cookies and want to show off, take a picture and hashtag it the Maria Liberati Show and post the photo on social media. We'll be gathering pictures and posting on my website in the next few weeks. Thanks to my producer, Britton Roselle, and this week's guest, Melissa Muldoon, and my production intern, Alexandra Krenz. Go to my website, marialiberati.com, to keep up with my blog and the show and my book series, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking. You can find me on Twitter at Maria Liberati, that's with a capital M, on Facebook at Chef Maria Liberati, on Instagram at Maria Liberati and Chef_Maria Liberati. What does food mean to you? Hashtag your answer with the Maria Liberati Show in a recorded soundbite of no longer than 60 seconds, or a social media post of 50 words or less, or post a photo of your own homemade Anginetti cookies and hashtag it the Maria Liberati Show. Post on social media or email to me at maria@marialiberati.com. If selected for an upcoming podcast segment, you will receive an autographed copy of my book, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking. And you can find most of the recipes in my books, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking cookbook series, or on the blog at marialiberati.com. If you have any questions or ideas for upcoming segments, email me directly at maria@marialiberati.com. Until next time, peace, love, and pasta.